you give us a snapshot of your childhood as a witness? Like, were you born into it?
My dad started studying with the witnesses when I think I was about 12 months old. And we actually lived here at the time in Australia, in South Australia, Adelaide. And he got a knock on the door from a witness and who he became friends with and started studying with.
Hey everyone, great having you. Today I'm honored to have a personal friend of mine on the show. I'm joined by Sean from the YouTube channel Yahweh Out There, formerly known infamously as Yahweh to Hell. Maybe we can get into that name change a little later. Anyways, Sean's been on YouTube for over a decade now. He focuses mainly on his past as a former member of the Jehovah's Witnesses. Although that's not everything, he talks about cults generally, recovery from high control groups, what I consider to be a very balanced and insightful approach to atheism, spirituality, and other great topics like that. With that said, I'm taking way too much time away from the man, the myth, the legend. So, Sean, it was 2009. YouTube was still very much in its infancy. Why did you decide to put yourself out there and speak up on some of these matters?
Well, it was, I saw it as an opportunity to, a platform, I suppose, to disseminate the information that I was finding out about the religion at the time. It was, I'd been out for some time, but the information that was available to us from like the internet age was information that we wasn't readily available prior to that for many Jehovah's Witnesses and even ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. So it excited me, and the information that I was discovering, I thought I just felt I needed to sort of tell others about, So yeah, it was a whole new thing, and I liked the idea of being able to sort of speak to people all over the globe about what I was learning, and yeah, I guess that was the thing that initially got me started with the whole YouTube channel.
It must have felt a lot like a kind of a David versus Goliath type battle. I mean, here you are going up, speaking against this very well-moneyed, multi-billion-dollar organization. Uh, what would have caused you to do that? It must have felt like screaming into the void at first.
Well, not really for me. I wasn't really intimidated about that because I was emotional about what I was learning, and when I say emotional, I guess it was a little bit of anger, coupled with excitement. And at that point, I'd been out so long that there was no real intimidation for me in terms of them being a big organisation. It was just something that when I was discovering these things, it was like a lot of guilt was coming away from me and coming out of me, because although I'd left and it had been some time, I still held quite a bit of guilt about what I'd done, sort of knowing that, yeah, sure enough, this can't be the truth, but still having that sense of, it could still be, But what I was finding out certainly made it clear to me that that I'd been lied to, and this couldn't be the right way to go. So, yeah, there's no intimidation there at all, and as far as witnesses go, there wasn't many witnesses present on the internet at the time of YouTube. So, I mean, I get a few trolls and whatnot. And my first channel, in fact, got closed down because they'd flag a lot of the videos that I was putting up. So,
really,
yeah. So the tactics were there, but they weren't sort of from anyone. They were from faceless people,
And when did you officially wake up? Like, which year was this?
It would be probably officially like when I got married, when I was so probably around the 1992, 93.
Oh, early.
Yeah. Well, I got married and we moved away from the town that we were living in, thousands of kilometres away from there, and that gave us both the opportunity to sort of, when I say both, my wife and I, the opportunity to stop going to meetings and stop witnessing without sort of being pressured or asked too many questions about why we'd stopped, because no one knew us,
Yeah.
so it was like we had this anonymity, and so we did that, and we did that for 12 months, and within the 12 months we both decided that this is the way we want to live our lives. And so I would say, around 92, 93, and that's when I stopped thinking about it altogether, and just went on with life. And I still saw my family because we moved back to where I am now, and in the thick of it. But we were no longer. We'd faded, if you know what I mean. We sort of faded up over 12 months. So when we moved back here, we were kind of like, we could hide from the witnesses that we were regularly in touch with previously. So we just went on and continued our life. We had kids, and worked, and just lived a fairly normal life until around about the year 2000, when I discovered the internet and started to see the hypocrisy and the lies and just the outright bullshit of religion altogether, if you like,
What had
So
forced?
Officially, sorry, man.
Oh, go ahead.
Officially early 90s, but when I really woke up and the guilt left me was when I discovered that, sure enough, they're wrong and I'm not wrong. You know what I mean? Which would have been around the year 2000, early 2000s.
What had forced that move with your wife thousands of kilometers away?
We just wanted to see change, really. I mean, I'm from Queensland originally, and I met my wife down here in Melbourne, which is in, funnily enough, Victoria, like where you are, in Australia, which is a fairly cold part of the country. And I grew up in the warmer part in Queensland. So we thought, sea change, let's go up there. And she had a job down here with the bank, and I just quit my job, went up there, found a job. And then within the time that I found a job up there, my wife got a transfer with the bank and transferred up there. So it was to do with just a change of scene, basically. And within 12 months, she missed her family a lot. She had brother and sister down here and mum, so we decided to move back here. But it wasn't really anything that we were forced to do. We just did it because we'd been married for 12 months, and we thought, well, not even 12 months, but we thought, okay, now we can start living our lives as a couple. And we did that.
Do you think you would have woken up without that distance from the religion?
At some point, yeah, probably not as early as what I did, but yeah, I always had in the back of my mind there was something not right about it. I saw the hypocrisy with my dad and the way he conducted himself as a witness compared to the way he conducted himself at home. So I saw these little things, and they just never sat right with me. I never really understood the whole not like living forever. I never really got that whole thing, and the fact that when you're in Armageddon, how is it that you avoid death? Silly things like if I fell off a mountain, how is it that I'm not going to die from that, or things like that. So there was little things in my head as a kid where it just really didn't gel at all. So it would happen ultimately, but I think getting married made it happen a lot sooner than what it would have. And I was only 20 when I got married, bear in mind, so I was fairly young. But yeah.
So it had been a while before you had come out publicly critical as the group. So then let's back up a little bit before then. Can you give us a snapshot of your childhood as a witness? Like, were you born into it?
My dad started studying with the witnesses when I think I was about 12 months old. And we actually lived here at the time in Australia, in South Australia, Adelaide. And he got a knock on the door from a witness and who he became friends with and started studying with. And from what I believe, Dad lived a little bit of a colourful life, and Mum wasn't really happy about that. He was drinking quite a bit down the pub, and I think she may have given him a bit of an ultimatum. So he saw it as an opportunity to change his life. He was brought up Roman Catholic and had this whole thing about religion and didn't like religion at all. And then the witnesses came along with this like a new age kind of, I suppose, look on religion compared to what he'd been used to. And coupled with the fact that he could make this change now and can keep his wife and kids. So I look into the motives of why Dad did what he did with the witnesses initially, but so by the time when I reached 2, so I think I had 2 Christmases, Mum and Dad were baptised, and then we moved to the UK and stayed there until I was about 10, and then they were, of course, pioneering and they were right into it by then, and came back to Australia when I was 10, and here I am from there. Yeah, so
Which part of the UK were you in?
West side of London.
Oh, really? Oh, I hadn't known that. That's amazing. And so, this is, as far as your memory goes back, you were part of the faith. What was like the family routine, study, preaching, all of that like?
Pretty typical, it felt like 80% of life was dedicated to the organisation, because we'd, like, for instance, we'd have our book study on the Tuesday, so we'd study for that on the Monday, have the book study on Tuesday. Wednesday was a nice day for me because there was no meeting or anything like that at all. And I must say, when I was at school, I used to get a lot of anxiety when it was a meeting night, because I think, the day can't be just over when I finish school. Then I had to go to this meeting and stay there till often, 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
So it was that sort of routine, studying, going to meetings. Then on Saturday, of course, we'd go witnessing. After witnessing, we'd study the Watchtower for the public talk the next day on Sunday, and then it would start again on the Monday. So it was that was when there was 5 meetings a week. That was a pretty heavy routine for us. Didn't like it at all. It was real. I just didn't like it. There was people used to say to me when I was in my late teens, "You've never really made the truth your own." And sure enough, no, I didn't, because I didn't. In order to do that, I would have had to have had some enjoyment out of it, and I wasn't enjoying anything about it at all. It was like it was a burden.
When you're that young, how can you tell the difference between, what you're taught as just basic beliefs, how you approach the world, reality, and this problem that, well, I just don't really enjoy the religion and making it my own, that sort of thing. Like, did you have atheistic thoughts, for example, when you were a kid, or, what did you believe in at that time?
Well, I essentially at that time I had no option, because it was the truth, and Jehovah was God. Jesus wasn't that important as it, he wasn't for anyone in that religion, because he's pretty much the greatest man that ever lived. They really sort of downplay the whole Jesus thing. So it was Jehovah, this all-powerful, all-seeing Jehovah that nobody could escape, and which, really altered the way I conducted myself. I was always a little bit paranoid about Jehovah knowing everything I did, so that kept me in line a little bit. Just the uncomfortability of it made it not so much something that I couldn't believe, but just not right for me. Just there's something not right about this, that doesn't feel right about this. And I understand now in hindsight what that was, and it was the idea of God, that whole idea of God being this person that needed to be obeyed and worshipped so much, But I just went along with it. I wasn't the smartest tool in the shed as a kid. That's still not, but
Oh, stop that.
just didn't have I couldn't embrace it. Do you know what I mean? And as soon as the opportunity sort of came to subconsciously, as soon as the opportunity came to get away from it, I did that. But I wasn't sort of a deep thinking kid about matters on atheism or theism. It's just Jehovah's Witnesses are the way, and this is and I kind of thought that we were blessed, and you know, how witnesses get this sort of attitude of they're better than others because they know this secret. Definitely had that complex, which I actually struggled with losing over my adult years, but I've learned to, definitely manage that now in terms of being a lot more humble and non-judgmental of others. But yeah, so no, I didn't sort of think, I didn't even know what atheism was. I pretty much, the only thing I knew was like people were Christians and people were Jehovah's Witnesses, and people were apostates. So yeah.
Yeah, not much in between, was there?
No.
So education wise then, you were I know certainly in my childhood there was that anti-intellectualism that, you know, you don't pursue higher education, maybe a trade and that's it. Was that was it always that way? Like when you were a child, where would they caution against high education?
Most definitely. And in 85, we were living in Queensland as a family, and mum and dad had ants in their pants. They couldn't sort of settle down in one place. So we moved back to the UK in 85. And I was 14, and they dragged me out of school. Like, if I wanted a day off, it was never a problem.
Yeah.
School was not really an issue because Armageddon was just around the corner, you know. So they picked up and went back to the UK in 85 and pulled me out of school in year 9. And then I didn't work. I mean, I was over there as a 14-year-old kid. Dad struggled to get work, you know. But within 6 months, one of my sisters who lived over here still became pregnant. And of course, mum wanted to come back and be with her again. So 6 months after being in the UK, we moved back to Australia again.
Oh, wow.
And that's when I got myself a job. I got myself an apprenticeship with as a wood machinist, because my sister's husband was doing that, you know. But there's certainly no encouragement to go out and be a doctor or a lawyer or anything like that. Dad was a window cleaner. Dad was, you know, he'd do his lawn mowing rounds and things like that. So he was initially a panel beater and could have done quite well. He worked for Porsche in the UK and could have done quite well, but it meant plenty of hours, so he had to give that up in order to maintain the schedule of the witnesses. But yeah.
And so your young adulthood, you were married by the age of 20, you said, right? So like how do you believe the faith set you up for unnecessary struggles later in life? Did you have any comments on that?
Well, I mean, I probably wouldn't have gotten married hadn't I been encouraged so heavily by the people that I was studying with too. I met this girl when I was 17, and we started dating. She was just a normal worldly girl, Catholic raised, and within 6 months or a year of dating her, of course, mum and dad really encouraged me to get her to study as well. And so did the guy that I was studying with, because dad would never study the books and the Bible with me. It would always be another younger sort of brother.
Yeah.
He never took that on board because we didn't sort of get along very well anyway, Dad and I. But so it was always somebody else. And this person who was staying with me sort of said, you know, you've got this girl, and the truth is that you should have a view to marriage. Do you have a view to marriage? And it's like, hang on a minute, I'm 17, you know. So within 3 years, I was married to her. And that they sort of said, you know, before you get married as well, the thing was that we were to get baptized together. And that way we could get married in a kingdom hall. I think I mentioned this in one of my videos recently. And I just couldn't come to terms with some of these questions that were coming out of the this book, the baptism book, and I was asking questions. And like this, at this point, I was sort of asking questions about the money. You know, this big organisation making so much money, and I'd heard about the Cadillacs that they were driving. You know, the at the headquarters, and the governing body was sort of living the life, and then there was. I had about 607 BC thing, how that wasn't making a lot of sense either. So I sort of asked things about the timeline there, and ultimately they said, you're not ready. You're not ready to sort of get baptized yet. And I continued with the plans to get married, and got married, not in the Kingdom Hall, of course. That was when I thought, okay, they're going to get back to me, and they never really did. They except for a couple came around. I think it was like a shepherding call or whatever they called it, and I still had questions for them about. At this point, I'd got my hands on some old Watchtowers, you know, and a Watchtowers that I remember as a kid, though, like this generation will by no means pass away. The generation from 1914. And I'd ask questions in this particular visit about that. And that was more or less the last we were sort of, we talked about baptism with them. They sort of left us alone after that. But they did promise to get back to me on the questions that I'd asked, and they never did. And within a couple of months after that, we pissed off up to Queensland and started to live our own lives. So that was more or less the official end of it for us. Me asking too many questions.
Yeah, that probably didn't fly too well, I guess. Hey, did your soon-to-be wife back then, did she ever make the truth her own, so to speak?
She was more on the path of doing that than what I was. Most definitely, she sort of didn't question too much, and just did what she needed to do. She was out witnessing on the weekends as an unbaptized publisher. And it was only when I started questioning things, and she was a fairly submissive person at that age, and so it was pretty much okay. So Sean doesn't really want to do this, so I'm happy. And sure enough, it turns out that she was more than happy to let it go, and just because that's right with her, they really encouraged her to cut down the association with her direct family, like her mother and her sister, who she's very, very close with.
Oh, that's
And
been
that
hard.
didn't, yeah, she didn't like that. So it's kind of like when I said, this isn't really for me right now anyway, let's go up to Queensland, let's sort of establish our lives, and we'll reflect back on that at some other point in time. She's, yep, no problems at all. I'm happy to do that. And started seeing her mum and her family again. And yeah, before you knew it, it was just like, okay, this is our new life without the witnesses.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. So you definitely hold back no criticism for the JW religious leaders, but I believe among the vast growing movement against this group, you were refreshingly unique. I'm speaking of your YouTube channel. Uh, from many I've encountered out there, your criticism is well tempered with understanding for present indoctrinated ones, uh, simultaneously with a healthy skepticism towards those who maliciously misrepresent the group too. And that's kind of two things that people don't really have present in their channel. Like, what motivates that? You've obviously been hurt by this organization. Why not just let the thing burn to the ground, so to speak?
Well, that was the attitude I took on in the when I began the YouTube videos. As I said, I was discovering things that had made me angry, and I wanted to burn it down. I became part of this group known as the Vast Apostate Army, which was a YouTube group. And 2017, November the 5th, I think it was, which coincided with V for Vendetta. You know, the whole Guy Fawkes thing. I was all about that, you know, and I was angry. And the reason now it's a little bit different is because I believe with all people who have been in a cult that their activism is important, but there needs to be a use by date for it. well, especially for me, because it was just consuming everything for me. I was constantly depressed, upset, and angry, and the fact these videos that I was doing these videos, that didn't help either. So I kind of pulled the plug on that and stopped making videos. When I did that, I realised, okay, this is now time to focus on life without the guilt anymore, because I understood that this was wrong, and just to see what it was to live without the presence of the whole Jehovah's Witness thing. So the approach I take these days with the videos I make is certainly nothing like it was. And I don't believe it's healthy for any ex-Jehovah's Witness. Maybe people like John Cedars, who's very well read in it, and I think that guy can dedicate his life to what he does with the witnesses and still maintain a pretty level head when it comes to his family life and his life outside of what he does on YouTube. So yeah, there's certain people that are made for that, whereas I think the majority of us, it can be a real hindrance to use the opportunity we now have to live, instead of just doubling down back into like a whole negative thing. So I'll make videos now, and I do it purely out of just as an entertaining thing. It doesn't. I don't away from videos thinking, I'm really angry about that topic or whatever. And I just like other people to see that they have this opportunity now that they've left and don't have that hanging over them anymore. Why not just use that opportunity to live life and just forget about them for a little while? Come to the point where you've got it out of your system, be an activist or whatever, but have a use by date on it, or what do they call it in the States, a best before time to stop that and go and live this gift that you've been given. It is a gift when you leave the witnesses. And I think focusing on life without the witnesses is much more important, because although you're out of the witnesses, if you're still an activist, it's still part of your life, very much so.
Oh yeah.
And that's not healthy. So yeah, that's my opinion on it. Others certainly, I've been attacked for that attitude before, but it's not for me. I don't think it should be for many of us. As I said, there are some out there that are good at it. You're a different kettle of fish altogether, because you talk more on the law of attraction and the way we work as humans in the mind and things like that. So I think there's people that can touch on it and not let it affect them, but for the most part, I think it's best to just let it go.
Well, I can definitely identify with what you're saying there, because even that spell there of a few months when I was really focusing on that, speaking about the witnesses, it did actually affect me a lot. I mean, I wasn't in a real dark place for those months or anything, but it was, kind of this internal anxiety that you carry with you, and you're always thinking about it because it's at the forefront of your mind. And geez, you brought up John Cedars a moment ago. Sorry, Lloyd Evans. And I can't imagine that he would be a particularly happy person. I mean, I don't mean to be rude in saying that, but
No.
it's just this constant, just slow moving train wreck. And let's face it, the witnesses, I don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon.
No.
So it's just like, do you want to dedicate your life to this? It's almost like your baptism is still existent in a way, because you're still focusing on it.
Most definitely.
Yeah,
most definitely. But there are some people that are built for that. I think he was
sure.
He was an elder and has a lot of insight about the goings on of the witnesses. So, and he's helped a lot of people, I'm sure.
Oh, he has. Yeah.
But like you said, it's like a slow train wreck, and I don't see the witnesses going anywhere in a hurry. I mean, they've been saying that since like this whole YouTube movement with the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, since I was into it in the beginning has been about, oh, it won't be long now, it won't be long now. It's almost like the witnesses saying it's just around the corner. I don't think the Jehovah's Witnesses or the Watchtower, their end is just around the corner. I mean, they've already planned a way of tackling certain things that come their way. And, they're not good, but they're an established organisation. So a few activists aren't going to make too much of a dent in that. And that's another thing as well. Like, really, if it's about bringing them down, really, if it's about going out there and helping others to sort of see that it's not the truth, like I believe Lloyd is about, that's a different thing.
Yeah,
The
that
whole
has value.
the protesting and all that sort of nonsense, I just think, oh, look, what's your motive really with this? Is it really about bringing them down? Really?
Mm-hmm.
Is it like 7.5 million people are involved in this organisation, and they're mega rich? So yeah, it's and I've never really thought to myself, let's bring them down, and that's what we're all about. I've never really thought that or saw that as a reasonable objective at all.
You woke up long before the earth-shattering publicity following the ARC there, the Australian Royal Commission into child abuse. Like, what was your reaction to that whole thing? Because you had woken up long before that. Was the scope of the situation surprising even to you as an Australian?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was. It was great. It was eye-opening. It was good exposure because a lot of witnesses found out about it. So in that sense, yeah, I think it was a good thing, and it did surprise me, Derek. Yeah, I thought, oh, here we go. This is really good. Unfortunately, unlike a lot of the other religions, or it's not just religions, it was bad organisations, like even scouts and things like that, who were investigated. Unfortunately, like most of those were happy to have the redress, whereas the witnesses didn't. Surprise me that they objected to that, which is unfortunate. But that's just the way they are. They're very they've got a bunch of men running that thing, so
Yeah.
it didn't surprise me that there was no real consequence to it.
Yeah, and it was fascinating too how it all sort of came online at once, right? Like, I believe there's an inquiry into the sociologists, the Scientologists, and the Catholics, and then just briefly after the 2015 inquiry into the Jehovah's Witnesses, Cardinal Pell was exposed there in Australia, and I was like, man, Australia has really got they're on fire, man.
They went crazy for this stuff. Yeah, I mean they threw that guy Pell in jail. He was in prison for a long time. Now he's out of the country because he's worried about getting killed. But it turns out he's not quite as guilty as what a lot of people imagine.
Oh, really? Hey, oh, I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, no, he's I feel sorry for the guy, actually. I mean, I really thought, let him rot in jail. But it turns out that, sure enough, he was turning a bit of a blind eye to certain things. He certainly wasn't involved in any of that sort of thing himself personally. But it was a bit like the witnesses, where he wanted to keep it in-house very much so. So, still guilty, like the elders are guilty about not reporting it to things like that to the authorities. But certainly not like we were led to believe over here that he was involved in it heavily. He was part of the stuff like that, and he wasn't, but he did turn a bit of a blind eye and moved certain priests out of their churches into other churches and stuff like that. So still guilty, but
but not directly guilty from what we know with abuses under him specifically. So well, that's funny. I hadn't heard about that, and that's, I mean, that is important to hear that, because you hear these big media exposés, and then if somebody comes out kind of innocent, they're not going to make as big of a fuss about that, are they? And so
no,
what shocked me. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No. I was just going to say you have to go out there and discover that yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, you do. And what shocked me about Cardinal Pell was like, I mean, he was considered almost something of an intellectual. Like he would go up and debate Richard Dawkins, very public debates, and
I watched that Q&A episode. Actually, that
it
was
was
really
interesting,
good.
wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's well, that's fascinating. We could talk about this sort of thing forever.
I know.
So back to the witnesses and kind of the legal end of things. What do you make of their legal struggles in Australia or even globally now? Like, do you have any thoughts on what's going on
I
there?
don't, Derek. As I said to you before, I don't dedicate much time
Yeah.
to Watchtower these days. I don't get online and go to jw.org or anything like that. If something comes up on YouTube, which sort of I'm fairly interested in and hasn't been disseminated properly, I'll make a video about that. But as far as the money goes and their state, as far as I know, they're pretty healthy still, you know, and they're shrewd business people. They're not idiots.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know what's going to happen with, like after the COVID thing or whatever. I don't care. I really don't, mate. It's not something that interests me at all. If they go down, I think that'll be a good thing. But I can't see. I think it's going to take. I mean, remember with the Candace Conti thing, her being paid all the millions of dollars that she was paid out. There was talk of that ending them, you know. So people sort of get into this hysteric type of thinking that, oh yeah, it's going to COVID's now and they're going to lose all this money. No, I really don't see that as a reasonable prospect for them, and don't really have an interest in that anyway.
What do you make of them evolving into what is essentially a digital religion now?
It's funny, mate. It's so funny. It's like it's so hypocritical, considering how they viewed all of that sort of thing when I was there, and for them to just be sort of doubling down into doing that exact same thing is just, it's laughable. I tell you what, I'd like to be a Jehovah's Witness kid now, much more so than when I was a kid. It seems a little bit or quite a different organisation altogether. You know, having cartoons with Caleb and only having like 3 meetings a week and doing it all online, and you know, it just seems a little bit more tolerable for them. I suppose they have to move with the times and understand that they were being pretty heavy-handed with their schedule on the members. So I think it's a good thing. They've had to do it, but it's funny for me because it was a whole different world for me when I was in there with the 5 meetings a week and everything being so manually structured.
Like even me as a 32-year-old, I was quite young, and even in the time that I've been away, this religion is just unrecognizable to me.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember back when you were being raised and how they would just tie into the televangelists? You know, like
Oh
they
yeah,
were just, this is ear tickling, you know, and now they're doing it.
yeah,
Like it's so funny.
exactly. It is, and it's been a slow sort of progress, and there's a lot of the witnesses that don't sort of I don't know how they do it, but they tend to block out what used to be. It's like the people prior to 1975, like my father, for instance, who's saying nowadays that oh no, they weren't saying it was going to come in. The end was going to come in 1975, and no, and the people that were selling up their houses and all that sort of thing, they were just people that you know, took what the brothers were saying the wrong way, and you know, made these assumptions, and they seem to really forget. And if you have a look at that speech, if you like, by Charles Sunutko in one of the district assemblies, if you listen to that, it's clearly stated that the end was going to come in 1975. And to be ready for that and stay alive for 75, and there's no doubt about it that they were spruiking that as a prophecy of the end. But now the witnesses just completely deny that stuff. So I think they deny the whole way it was 20 years ago when I was involved. They sort of, with them, like you said, getting into the televangelists and stuff like that. No, we weren't so much like that. It's just the way they slowly drip feed this brainwashing into people, I guess. But it's funny.
That's funny how gradualism works. They always speak about the gradualism of the outside world and how it steadily gets worse and more evil. Well, I think there's kind of another gradualism from our perspective and seeing how this religion shape shifts, how chameleon-like they are,
Most definitely. Yeah, for sure.
Earlier, we had touched on some of the ways being raised in this group disadvantaged you as an adult. And I understand there was even a point, and this is where we do a bit of a pivot here. I understand that there was even a point where you had become homeless. And like, how long did that last? And what do you credit to your upbringing as a witness to that state of affairs?
Well, I think having the mentality I had as a child going into being a witness into marriage straight away, I never really had the opportunity to live as a single person. I went from mum and dad, or mum doing my washing and making my bed, to straight into being married and having a wife sort of taking care of those things. And then 20 years later, when we split up, my wife and I had no foundation of how life worked by myself, and I was very immature in that sense. I really didn't know how to look after myself, and I mean, we did okay, my wife and I, although I have an autistic child, and we had that to sort of contend with, if you like. Jane could never work, so it was sort of a single income rather than her sort of working as well. So I worked hard, and we established a good life, and for the kids. And they got to an age where they didn't sort of need. Jane couldn't work because she had to be home for Ryan all the time, my son, and he got to an age where she could go out and work. And when that happened, and she had an income, I basically said, bye, I'm out of here, which was crazy. I was at a stage where I was abusing alcohol really badly, and also drugs, heavy drugs, and but still maintaining a working life. Like, I was a pretty well-functioning drug addict, but got to the point where I had a bit of a breakdown, and I left my wife and went to America for a year. And that's when I came back and found Jane had sold the house. And so I didn't have that anymore. And now it was time to wake up to what you've done. And found myself in a situation where, okay, I don't have a house. I'm a single guy. I haven't got a job anymore. Finding a place to live is not easy. I didn't know that. I took it for granted that would be an easy thing. And so I really got more into drugs and alcohol to escape the reality of the situation I put myself in. And I couch surfed. So I had a number of friends that I just stayed at their houses, and it got to the point where even that ran out for me. So that's when I became really homeless, and had to sort of, either was nights I'd just sleep on a golf course or in a bus shelter.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There were times where I didn't eat for days, and I resorted to even stealing food from supermarkets and things like that, just to survive. So I went down that path, and it was a path of, I'd regretted so much what I'd done with my family by leaving them, that I didn't actually want to live anymore. I became suicidal, and I made a couple of attempts there. And it took me a good 6 or 7 years to realise that, okay, life is worth living, and let's look towards the future now. And because there was no future for me. Just like, if I didn't wake up, that'd be a great thing. Whereas now it's entirely different. I see, my kids are my future, and I'm actually starting a course in mental health next month.
guys, did you like this video? You know what to do. And if something I mentioned today resonated with you, click one of them cards on this screen. I have lots of related content sure to interest you. Thanks as always for your views, and we'll see you next time.